wanted to know which planet was causing your suffering? How about Earth?
Hey everyone, Felix here, back with a new Echion Return video. For today's video, I want to go over a tier list that I made today as I'm recording this video on the characters and their place in the NA meta. I know that it's a bit weird for me to make a tier list of this because I don't really spam that many games, but I was kind of feeling spicy today and I wanted to just put this content out there because I haven't really seen many content creators in NA making this content. So as long as it gets a conversation going, I'm fine with doing it. Now, obviously, I am not a rank spammer. This is more of my thoughts after watching a lot of ranked games on streams, or just how I feel the power level when I see them in norms or my own elo when I do play games. So take it all with a grain of salt. If you don't agree with what I put characters as, don't fret. Feel free to disagree with me in the comments as long as you're not being super inflammatory. This is just something that I'm doing mostly for fun and just to see what other people think on YouTube, and also just get the content out there. So before I get into the one or two lines I want to give every character, you should understand that every character in the game is very, very viable. And excluding just Johann and Charlotte, if you get really, really good at the character, you will definitely climb. And I know there's a lot of players that might be hard stuck in platinum, diamond, gold with the character. And I think if you're really hard stuck with any character in the game, then it's not a matter of your character necessarily being weak. It's just more of maybe you're not making your combos correct. Maybe your macro when it comes around to moving the map and being in positions to not get third party, maybe that's a bit lacking. Every character in the game is very, very good. It's just the game is pretty balanced. I know that some characters put in a lot less effort and have a lot more nonsensical combos that kind of just end games than other characters can. But for the most part, every character has that tiny hint of BS in them that can really ruin someone's day. And as long as you understand that element of your own character and you understand how to abuse that to your maximum potential, you will see yourself climb in elo quite quickly. So with all that said, let's jump into the tier list. I'm going to start in the reverse order just because I feel like it's really disheartening to see the character you want to play lower in the tiers. So I just want to cover that before we get into the higher tiers. So starting with D tier, Hyejin is a very combo reliant mage. You have to understand how to pace your ultimate and your skill shots. And if you can't do that, she feels very underwhelming. Shoichi is a character that requires very, very high APM and also very strong understanding of where to hit your daggers and skill shots. And if you can't do that, he'll also feel very underwhelming. Nathapon is a character that requires you to understand his ultimate and his E and W minigame. If you aren't able to hit those skills, he'll feel very weak, but once you can, he'll feel really strong. So these three characters in D tier all have a very similar issue where they have very strong combo potential, but combo potential in this game is very hard to kind of maximize because a lot of players will understand what you want to do and they'll try their hardest to deny you what your game plan is. So even while you're learning your character, you still have to learn how to do the proper play to kind of coerce your opponents into letting them get hit by the combos, or even learning the somewhat ways to like piece together your combos, and kind of like, I guess, like gluing the misshapen pieces to get the full combo off, even if it doesn't feel great. Charlotte and Johann are, unfortunately, they should be a tier lower, but I don't feel like making an F tier. These characters are pretty bad because they've both been slashed. They're just super over nerfed and they all have no agency in the game. So that's why they're at the bottom of the tier list. In C tier, we have characters that are a little bit better and not as combo reliant, but you still have to have very strong positioning. So Tsubame, you have to understand your range and when to dive, or else you kind of just explode instantly. William, you have to have very high APM and good ball control and movement, and also understand when you can dive in and use your Q to blast somebody into pieces. Garnet is kind of just the weakest tank right now. You have to really understand how to juggle your W and maintain your HP, or else you'll also just die instantly. And also your ultimate has been nerfed really hard, so you can't rely on that as a kind of pseudo immunity halfway through the game. Jackie has no range. You really have to understand when to jump in as Jackie, or you might just die instantly to being focused at an inopportune jump in time. Aiden, similar idea as Hyejin, Shoichi, and Nathapon, but since his combos are a bit more intuitive and you have the gun form to save yourself from being super out of it, he is a little bit higher on the list, but he still has the same problems as D tier, where you have to understand what you want to do. It's just his damage output in neutral is going to be generically better because of how strong his Q is. Piolo is going to be a character that requires pretty good mastery again. It's just that his mastery is a bit more straightforward in my opinion, and a lot of people complain about Piolo to the extent that I don't see people complain about Hyejin, Shoichi, and Nathapon. So it's having a bit higher because he does have that a little more tangible element of BS in him. Echion used to be a monster on Lumia, but now he's been nerfed a lot. So you have to understand how to hit his ultimate and how to pace your E timing, or else you can't really get the most out of him. The Echion I'm going to be talking about here is going to be the Death Adder, whichever one, no, Black Mamba, whichever one has the AoE damage, because that's the more common one. Dailin is also pretty good, but you do have to understand how to go in as her. She has this problem where she is made of paper, and her ultimate can be canceled really easily. So if you're not going in at good times, you can't really one-shot people. However, if you are going at good times, she'll feel absolutely amazing because you just one-tap people all the time. Like, her auto combos will just delete people. But again, because she is so squishy when you go for those builds, you have to understand when to go in. Chiara, very similar issue where she seems really, really strong when you play her cooldowns properly, but if you mistime your engagement and you mistime your cooldowns and shield, you'll just explode like a balloon and you won't feel her strength. Aya in this tier is considered the AR version or the auto attacker version. I think pistol and sniper are maybe a bit higher, but I think she is the weakest AD carry right now, which is why she is at the bottom of C. Maybe if she was considered under pistol or sniper, she might be bottom of B. Basically, a lot of characters, or she's the weakest ADC because she doesn't have that much BS. Like, she has her ultimate to peel melees, but against ranged characters, she doesn't have much going for her. For pistol and sniper, it's kind of the issue where people mostly understand how to sidestep. Maybe in low elo, people won't sidestep her, so she'll feel way better. But the higher up you go, the more reliably people will kind of counterplay your buttons. Leni is going to be in C tier just because she has better playmaking potential and she has better enablement for melees. If you ever have a Leni with a double melee comp, they'll just go absolutely crazy because she has so many shields, heals, and movement speed steroids. Her ultimate also lets her be her own character and catch people. And while it is pretty hard to do that, it's a really big difference when it comes to solo queue. Now going into B tier, Karla is just going to be your standard mage. She requires a lot of APM and aim, and she's quite good, but I think she's been toned down just a little bit, so her efficacy isn't as good as it used to be. Lenore is going to be in the same boat, where she's been nerfed a little bit because she's kind of a terror when her Cataclysm was at peak power, but she's very strong against melees, and if you play her safely, you almost will never find yourself being dove that hard. And if you're dove hard, you have your E and your W as a failsafe, and also your ultimate can catch a lot of teams off guard. Priya is just a very good support mage. She does have her moments of weakness where she can't get her ultimate in a good spot, and she also gets dove and forced to burn cooldowns before she can really get value. But her poke is really good, and her shielding is also really strong from her Q and W spam. Ava is kind of in a weird position. I think she's quite good in certain comps, and her damage output can't really be contested when she has a full VF bar. But since her place in the meta is really dependent on not being third party and also having proper compositions, she kind of falls down below where she could be, and she's really just dependent on how well you space out your opponents. Haze should have been an S tier, but she got nerfed pretty hard in the last patch. She might still be an A tier to be fair, but in NA, she seems very low power. I don't know if that's just because NA meta doesn't suit her that well, or maybe the NA bruisers and tanks don't play around her properly. But I know in Korea she's quite popular and she's considered pretty good, but in NA at least she isn't popping off as hard as she could be. Sissela is just a very safe mage. She is a bit lower on the power level because she doesn't have quite insane burst potential unless she is at 1 HP and she ults and then she Qs you. But her safety is something to scoff at, rather. She can pull herself around with E and give herself massive shields. She can fish for E's from a pretty safe distance if her Wilson is out, but she just lacks that punch that a lot of higher tier characters have unless she plays aggressively, and if you don't play aggressively, she can feel a bit lackluster. Bernice is in B tier just because he could be an A tier. This tier list is sorted so that there's a curve, and Bernice and all these other B tier characters kind of fell through the cracks because of it. But Bernice is just going to be your very safe, like, catch ADC. He's going to be like Ash or Varus if you ever played League of Legends, where he has very little mobility, but if he's able to play to his maximum DPS, he will kind of crap out damage. But if you don't play to him and he misses all of his bolas, he will feel very weak. Debi and Marlene are really odd because I feel like they're absolutely insane in certain scenarios, but they're not always insane, if that makes sense. There'll be some games where they feel like absolute goddesses, and some games where you wonder why you picked the character. So I don't really know why that dynamic exists, but because one's at D tier and one's at S tier, she just gets averaged out to B tier. Adela is going to be a character that you have to be pretty good at managing your queen combos and stuff. She does like very, very obnoxious when she's played well, but there's also a bunch of scenarios where she's not played well or she can't get her full value and then she feels very weak. Very similar to Debi and Marlene. Rio is going to be B tier just because she's been targeted nerfed a lot this patch, or this season rather. She's still very good, don't get me wrong, but she could be better. Chloe is going to be a character that I think maybe just might be bad to the meta. There's a lot of characters that can just blow through her. They can either blow through her ultimate, or she can't kill them fast enough, or they can just AoE her easily. She's quite strong, and especially to the certain characters, she does feel very unfair. But the fact is that Chloe does have counterplay because a lot of characters have strong AoE, and she doesn't have the greatest DPS. She has pretty high DPS, but it's not insane. It's just very good. Rozzi requires a lot of skill to play. I think Rozzi might be the highest DPS ADC in the game. The issue is that since she's so close range, she constantly exposes herself to danger. And because of that, your teammates might not know how to play around her, and you might not be that great at spacing her. So she feels weak in comparison in solo queue and in NA, where might have a lot of ping, or your teammates don't know the game plan and all that. Martina, I think if she started with broadcast, would be an S tier, but because you have to get your broadcast first, a lot of things can go wrong in between the start of the game and that power spike. If you could get that power spike on night 1 every game, 100% of the time, she would be really strong. But it's because of the unreliability, it introduces a lot of games where you just kind of lose instantly, and that's really bad for solo queue. Adina requires a lot of time to get good at her, and also she has this weird thing where she traumatized a lot of people in the past, so she got nerfed a lot, and also people finally learned how to play around her. So while she is very, very strong, very, very versatile, there's now a kind of arms race where an Adina player has to learn how to counterplay the counterplay that people have against her spell spam. Tia feels quite strong, but she's not only difficult to play, but she also can't really pop people instantly. So to understand how to pace your spacing and spells, and then when to actually go in and use everything, because if you use everything at the inopportune time, you kind of just burn out all your resources and you just die. But if you pace it out properly and you actually use it when it's appropriate, you'll feel absolutely amazing. Felix has a lot of clips that make him look absolutely absurd. The only issue is that Felix is forced to build very, very glass cannon, which means that those clips are all in very, very niche scenarios where he can truly shine. And while he can be an absolute menace in those cases, if he goes against a team comp that doesn't let him E-spam, while he is still strong if you really get at playing him, he's not absolutely absurd like he would seem in those clips where he just hits E 15 times and autos the ADCs to death. Silvia is a bit of a hot take. I think Silvia, if you go Frankie Doodle, she's probably like very high S or very high A to low S tier, but I think Silvia just has a problem where you have to really understand when you're allowed to go in because of how all in her bike form is. If you don't understand her damage capabilities almost perfectly, you are probably gonna die if you go in improperly with bike form. And because of that, she kind of ranges from places where your bike form engage works and then sometimes doesn't work, and then depending on if you're lucky or not, she'll have that effect. So it's very similar to Debi and Marlene and Adela until you master her, where she has very high highs and very low lows. Kenneth, I honestly want to put higher just because I don't like the guy, but I think that's just because he counters a lot of my characters rather. Basically, Kenneth has the same issue where you have to know when to use his cooldowns. He's basically a step above Chiara because he isn't as reliant because he has a lot of healing and he has a lot of damage reduction on his W, but you'll still feel the effect of not using your abilities properly versus using your abilities properly. If you go against the right composition, Kenneth can 1v2 or even 1v3 and feel like an absolute maniac, but if you misuse your abilities and you're against the bad comp, you can die instantly and feel like he's the worst thing in the world. Cathy is very feast or famine. If you're strong with her combos, she'll feel amazing, but if you're weak at them, she'll feel terrible. And it's a very, again, similar like S tier if you play her really well, D tier if you don't play her well. Abigail, very similar vibe. I think a lot of the assassins or a lot of the characters here are, again, the problem of having where if you play them very, very well, they'll feel absolutely amazing or they'll look absolutely binoculous. Bonkers? I don't even know what I was trying to say there. But it's the same thing as the other two characters, right? If you play her very well, she'll feel amazing. But if you play her poorly, you don't hit your W, you use your E badly, you use your ultimate badly, you just die instantly and you'll feel like the character's useless. But because she can feel absolutely insane to some people, she can't really be that bad. Laura, again, very, very strong engage. Her kit has been reworked to a point where it's perfect for squads. But because she was so obnoxious when she was good at squads, Nimble had to nerf her down a little bit. So I think she's still quite good. She has really strong engage. She might even be C tier, but I think in my head I'm just thinking like I've seen her do too many things, but maybe she does belong a tier lower, to be honest. Estelle is going to be in B tier. This range of tanks is just going to be here because it's almost impossible to have tanks that are actually weak. Garnet is only C tier because of a flaw of the way I do these tier lists. But basically, Estelle, Mai, Alonso, and Lenox. Or okay, let's go through the list first. Mai and Estelle are a bit better than Alonso and Lenox because they can actually run away to some degree of success. Estelle also has a really strong shield, But the issue is that Estelle has been nerfed a lot since her heyday in Season 1. Her shield went from like 80% DR to 40%. So there are a lot of moments where you just won't quite do enough damage, or you won't quite be able to shield as properly as you want to. Mine's going to be in the same boat where if you play really well, if your ultimate's used perfectly, your taunts are used perfectly, she can feel ridiculous. But if you mismanage her W usage or you miss taunts a lot, she'll feel really bad. These these 4 tanks in a row, are really good in coordinated play where you can really capitalize off their CC, but in solo queue, because everyone's thoughts are mismatched and not aligned, it's really hard to utilize their cooldowns well. And if you're the last one alive, you're probably just losing the fight, right? Alonso, again, has a problem of being really, really good in coordinated play because you can really coordinate your ultimate and your E and really peel well. But in solo queue, you don't have that level of communication, so it can feel quite bad. But it's pretty hard to deny the fact that he is just still quite strong when he is played well. And if you get the aggro and you use your W properly, he can be absolutely immortal in the right scenarios. Lenox is also in the same boat where if you play her well, she'll feel immortal. But she has the issue where she's quite good against melees and she's quite bad against ranged characters, and she also can't solo anything. She has to have a damage dealer with her unless she gets a perfect engage with her ultimate. And even then, if the enemy team has like healers or something, she won't be able to do much because her damage is while it's very high and consistent, it's not bursty. And if you can't burst characters in this game, you can't kill them most of the time. Alex is pretty good, but you have to be really, really good at him. You have to manage so many things to actually excel at him. So he's in B tier more for the skill floor alone, but because learning his combos is the first thing you do as Alex, he's a bit higher just because you're forced to learn them. Kind of like a Adina, where like the necessity exists already. So if you're picking up the character, you're probably being forced to learn everything to begin with. And also he has a range for him, so he's much safer just in general. Fiora, I haven't seen too much in NA, but she feels quite strong. It's another same thing as Alex, where you have to be quite good at her to get the most out of her, but once you're there, you're doing pretty well for yourself. And Zahir is another instance where I think since Free Stratos isn't playing, I can't tell how good he is, but he's probably quite strong just because Nibble Neuron gave him a huge quality of life buff on his W, and you know, it's Zahir. If he hits stuff, he'll delete you. Bianca is going to be an A tier just because even though she is very cooldown reliant, the base level of hitting your ultimate and running at somebody is so high that it'll probably win you a bunch of games even if you don't know what you're doing. As long as your team is following up with you on your ultimate, you look absolutely ridiculous. And you might not know what you're doing, but your team knows what you're doing, and that's all you need to succeed. It'll probably be pretty well. There is still a bit of an issue where you kind of cap out doing that and you have to understand what you want to do as Bianca, but in low elo, I think it's probably fine. Like, I've seen some pretty bad Bianca gameplay, but since I knew it was going to be bad, I played around it and it ended up working out somewhat okay. And that's pretty telling of how strong Bianca is as a character. Camilo is a really, really strong bruiser. He just looks absolutely obnoxious when he's being played well, and he has very good shielding, healing, and very good sticking power. And in solo queue, where not everyone wants to peel your ADC or your damage dealers, Camilo excels. Darko, very straightforward, very bulky, very annoying. He does have a problem where he can't quite one-shot people and he can't quite run away from a lot of teams, but because his base kit is so good and his durability is so strong, I think he's a very good bruiser to pick up. He's more of a tank really in that regard, but he's quite strong to just pick up and roll with. Shokai is going to be a very good tank. He has a bit of a problem where if you dive too aggressively, you might die instantly. But if you play to peel and you play somewhat safely, he'll feel really good because his W heals so much and his counter engage is so good. Yuki just looks absolutely ridiculous. This is going to be two-hand Yuki. I think DS Yuki is probably in C tier. But I think two-hand Yuki is quite tanky. Every time I see him, he looks absolutely ridiculous because he just runs around, does damage, and if he hits ult, you have to respect it. And if you can't kill him in time, he'll just half off their team for free. Elena, great at ratting, great combo potential. She just requires a bit of hands because her full combo is a bit weird. And also it can feel really bad when you're fully kited. But if you do hit your combos on the right character, you can really one-shot them with full tank items. That's kind of ridiculous in my opinion. Leon is going to be a character that does a lot of damage and does really good comboing. The main issue is that he is pretty combo reliant. So if your combo is down or you whiff your combo, you'll feel really bad and you have to run away from the fight. Isaac gonna be the same thing where if you hit your combo and you're hitting the right person, you'll kind of just delete them. But if you whip everything and you kind of get kited out, you'll feel really bad. You'll probably just pop instantly. Jan is a very, very high skill cap bruiser. He's probably the best bruiser in the game, and I fully believe that if you mastered him and you're playing him in coordinated play, he is probably S tier. But because this is gonna be NA solo queue and you're probably learning him, he gets dropped down to A tier because while he is still very functional, like you have to learn the bare minimum combo with him to be a true terror, he doesn't really have the same oomph he does in the top level of play because they haven't truly mastered his cooldowns. Marcus is an A tier because I think the character is super easy, super straightforward, and super bulky. I think he does have an issue where he can die instantly if he takes all aggro and focus, but that's more of an issue with engaging that a lot of the characters in B tier and C tier have as well. If you understand how to properly engage, your ultimate into W flip can wipe entire teams instantly with almost no counterplay. Nikki, I put in high tier because I'm personally convinced Nikki is absolutely absurdly strong. But I think Nikki in general isn't performing that great in NA. I'll personally be trying to change that opinion. But yeah, if you play Nikki and you think she's weak, I don't blame you. I just think she's strong. So I'm going to personally bias put her way higher than she's supposed to be. Leon is a character that I'm going to put in high tier mostly because of 99 Cash. She is a character that is really high skill floor, pretty high skill cap, but when she gets going, she really gets going. She is a character that thrives in clutch situations if you set her up properly. And while it is team reliant, if you're the player, you will understand how to force those clutch situations yourself. Barbara is a character that absolutely stomps people that don't know what she wants to do. That's why she's high elo or high tier. I think her popularity and effectiveness is falling off as people learn what she wants to do. But before that, and also in low elo where people don't really know what she wants to do, she'll super excel. And I think that she belongs in A tier because she does some ridiculous damage when she hits everything. Theodore probably belongs in B tier like Alonso in them, but I fully believe that if you get really good at Theodore, he feels absolutely amazing. His burst, healing, and survivability are all off the charts when you understand how to play him. But the only issue is that he is pretty team reliant because he can't solo people that are 1v1ing him. He does require a person in front of him. So I guess in that regard, he should be in B tier just because he needs a wall. But I think he's just a little too strong when he gets his pop-off in solo queue. And his pop-off isn't even hard to do. It's just kind of conditional because everybody plays around it. Like, that's how scary it is. It's some of those Adina scenarios where people have been so traumatized by him that your life is hard because people are already thinking about you so much. Celine, pretty hard to play. Unfortunately, she's kind of ping gated, and even when you do have the ping, you have to learn the combo and the button presses properly. But her poke and her damage and burst are really strong. She's just a little hard to understand because if you whip the combo, you'll be pretty weak for a long time, and if people abuse that, you'll feel pretty bad. Arda, insane utility mage. His gate, his burst, not his burst, but his gate and CC are ridiculous. I think Arda is probably the strongest utility mage in general because he can save so many lost games just with the ultimate cast. And his ultimate is on a like sub 10 cooldown late game, which is absolutely insane. Nadine is going to be probably the strongest baseline AD carry for gameplay. She has really strong autos and she has a really good self-peel skill. And I think if you're trying to just hard stomp a solo queue game, Nadine is just genetically the best option. I just think she probably doesn't belong in S tier because she doesn't have ridiculous survivability like the top two ADCs have in this list. Katja is a character built for squads. She has insane vision, she has insane poke, insane burst, insane damage over time. She just has a problem where she's made of paper, so if you miss space a singular time in a fight, you will be dying. Like, people will not let your character live. So you have to understand spacing really well, but I think her baseline kit is just so strong that everyone plays her, and everyone plays her even if they're not good at the ADC part, and she's still getting good results despite that. Isol as AR is really strong because his Q will shred through people. Low known detail, or maybe it's not really that little known, but his passive does shred armor when he his Q shreds armor when it pops, and his passive gives him a massive steroid when he pops traps, and his Q is a trap. So whenever he pops his Q on somebody in a team fight, his damage skyrockets, and the person he's autoing, if they don't get out of the way immediately or kill him within a few seconds, he will be killing them. So he's really strong in solo queue because you just focus on one person, and he'll deal with the rest. Adriana is always going to be really good in solo queue, almost no matter what. Even if her numbers are really low, even if her damage is kind of bad, you can always at least force a guaranteed temporary zone achievement because you can rat really well. You have really strong vision control, and the only reason why you really die on Adriana before temporary final zones is because your team took a really bad fight and you committed to it as well, or you got third-partied, which is not something most characters can speak for. Vanya is in A tier because she's really, really good in the NA meta. You'll see that there's a lot of melee characters in the higher tiers, and so melee characters get played a lot, and Vanya loves beating on melee. She gets a massive shield, does a lot of damage, and she'll just thrive. This Hyelmu is going to be Tomboy Hyelmu. Assassin Hyelmu kind of just deletes people if you play it right, and I think he probably belongs in B tier as well, but I think I'm still a little too traumatized from when he was really strong and just one-shot people that he's going to be in A tier for now. Now in S tier, these are the characters that are just really strong, or their stats are so absurd that I just don't want to put them lower. Suwa is kind of the exception. I think Suwa is actually in high A or low S, but she's just here because I'm putting respect on Superior's name. Superior has been so consistently number one NA throughout the entirety of squads and for a very long time in early access that Suwa, at least in NA, can be nothing else but top of S tier because Superior is just so dominant on her. So if you're not Superior and you're playing Suwa, just know that she's a little lower. This is mostly just a respect thing for him. Luke, I think, is genuinely the strongest character in NA. And I'm not talking about like Pen Luke or Bruiser Luke. I'm talking about full tank Luke. I think full tank Luke with maybe one damage item is so obnoxious because he's not good in competitive play, don't get me wrong. I think in competitive play, people will learn how to play around him and he feels very weak. But because he heals so much and he can tank so much and he can still deal respectable damage, he just feels really obnoxious to play against because in solo queue, if he doesn't get focused fully, he'll just W in full heal. And if you focus him half-heartedly, he soaks all the damage and he kind of ruins your game plan because his teammates are operating with essentially Mosquito soaking up a lot of damage he shouldn't be taking. So it's really, really hard to play against Luke in NA solo queue because he excels in clutch situations, he excels in soaking aggro, and he excels in just living for a very long time. And again, to reiterate, this is solo queue NA Luke, not anywhere else, not competitive, not Korea, just NA solo queue. 11 is absurdly beefy, and she is so hard to kill if she does not want to die. That's basically it. Her stats are insane in Korea, and 11 as a character is not that difficult in my opinion, so we could do it in NA as well. Magnus, exact same vibe as 11, where his stats are absolutely insane, and he's very, very straightforward. It's just a matter of people playing him consistently, and maybe it's a comp thing, like you only pick Magnus or 11 in certain comps. Daniel, by far the best assassin in the game right now. I think Daniel's existence alone pushes every other assassin down a tier because he's just so efficient. He did get nerfed really hard on the last patch, so maybe he's like high A instead of low S. But this character just needs to barely breathe on your AD carry to delete them. And he is kind of more of a top 2 character instead of a winning character. But if you play against Daniel and you've played ADCs, you know the pain, right? Irem is, again, kind of a KR bias thing, but she's also performing quite well in NA. She is very high skill floor, to be fair, but she is super consistent once you're good at her. I don't think I've seen Irem fall out of top 10 in KR in years, and she's never been nerfed. And also, the Irem one-tricks in NA are very, very good at her, and they're very, very consistent. And so I think Irem is possibly S tier more because she's insanely consistent, more than she's actually good. She just kind of vibes, and she'll just get everything, and she will never be nerfed because I guess the devs like her or something, even though she's absolutely insane. Who knows? Emma is a character who kind of borders on the same idea as Irem, where she's not super popular. Actually, no, I take that back. Emma is absolutely insane. She has a bunch of players in NA, a bunch of players in Korea. She has tournament showings. She does absolutely ridiculous combos that really don't have much counterplay, and she has not been nerfed. In fact, she was buffed the last time. So Emma is a character that you need to understand the combos. You understand how to properly use her skills, but getting polymorphed into AoE polymorph into getting hit and then she totems and her team falls up is really ridiculous. It's basically like a comp div, or you catch the Emma off guard to even kill her half the time. So the last 2 characters, these 2 characters are in the very similar boat because they're both AD carries. Well, Jenny's a mage technically, but she autos a lot, so she's AD carry in this scenario. But these are 2 characters that not only deal a lot of damage, but they have insane durability because of their kit. Now, neither Hart nor Jenny have the best mobility nor the best DPS out of all the ADCs in the game, but it's purely because they have a button that lets them go immune, essentially. It just makes them way better than every other carry on the list for solo queue. Heart's ultimate, if you haven't completely messed up the fight and you almost got killed instantly, it lets you equalize the damage you took with any assassin diving you, and most assassins are very squishy. So not only are you equalizing the HP levels, you get to maybe kill them afterwards if you time your damage better than them, or you get peel from your teammates as your ult pops, which is really obnoxious in solo queue because, again, people are uncoordinated and your damage is still good and you still have all the skills that come with Heart. Jenny, very same idea, where your burst and your damage is not the highest, but it's very, very strong. And even if you go down, if you go down your passive and your teammates are still there to peel for you and follow up for you, the fight can be won even if you mess up. The fight can be won with you inting on purpose and setting up for a team. It's not really something that AD carries should be doing, but Jenny can do. So yeah, that's gonna be the video. It's gonna be a bit longer than I want it to be, but I want to talk about every character a little bit. Let me know if you guys disagree or agree with anything I said, and yeah, I hope you guys don't mind too much the lower effort videos coming out in the week. I'll try to make at least one high effort video. So, see you guys next time. Have a good day or night wherever you are. Bye bye.